Here are 10 easy tips to improve at Battlefield 1 for new players or those that just want a refresher. Tip 1. Use the spot button. It temporarily marks the enemy you're looking at with a red icon above them, making it way easier to track your target, especially as Battlefield games tend to have questionable visibility at times. It also marks that player on the minimap both for you and your teammates, so if you don't get the kill, your teammates have a better chance of doing so for you. For default controls, spotting is RB or R1 on console. On PC is the Q key. Obviously, if you change your controls, this action may change as well. Bonus tip, spotting also works on cavalry and vehicles, including the behemoths. Although if your teammates are unaware of a giant behemoth vehicle, then you probably have bigger problems to handle. Bonus tip, this input also does things such as mark flags if you're the squad leader. Now it's 2025 and I still have players asking me what the spot button is, so whilst this may seem very basic to open with, it's something that's still being missed by players not that far off a decade after release. So you can always get a leg up on those players simply by implementing this tip. Why not make it easier to get the kill after all? Good first tip, consider subscribing for daily Battlefield content such as videos, streams and shorts. I always appreciate that, and there's a new Battlefield coming, so why not sub to a channel that's going to give you regular Battlefield content. Tip 2. Don't try to jump shot in this game. If you're coming from Call of Duty or Destiny or whatever it may be hard coded into your brain to jump right in the middle of a gunfight to try to win a 1v1. Well, in Battlefield 1 specifically, that's going to get you killed almost all the time. Not so in BF5 or BF 2042, but in BF1, your gun won't fire when you jump. If you're holding the trigger down and you press jump, your damage stops and you're a super easy target for the enemy. It won't start firing again until I believe after the apex of your jump, so the top of your jump. So not such a great idea here, which can play havoc with the muscle memory of players that switch around FPS games regularly. But if you want to succeed in BF1 gunfights, drop that habit. If you want to be harder to hit in this game, try employing strafing, which is side to side movement during the gunfight, for those that isn't obvious too, or a little more advanced, crouch shooting. I found it to be super effective. Either a single crouch to start the fight or multiple crouches throughout it. Give it a go. If you don't like it, just stick to strafing. Although you can of course jump corners if you want to, as long as you're coming back down again by the time you cross that corner mark. Tip 3, and continuing to help you to win gunfights, use that hip fire. Obviously use it when suitable, but more specifically, if you're using a trench variant. Let's take the MP18 trench as an example, as it's one of the early available guns. This is built to be used for hip firing. The game is literally telling you how to use it. Fire it from the hip. Most of the time you don't need to aim down sight. And if you find yourself having to ADS super often with trench variant guns, you're likely not using them in the situations they're built for, so consider a different option, or altering your playstyle with that gun. A lot of other shooting games have pretty limited hipfire effectiveness. BF1 leans into hipfiring with certain guns hard, at ranges you wouldn't expect. They can do serious damage. This isn't to say you never aim down sight, of course you do, or you can, but just give the hipfire a proper chance on the trench variants until you have a decent understanding of when you aim down sight and when you don't. In fact, it always helps to read the brief description the game gives you when selecting your variant. It really can be as simple as just trusting what it says. I also still have people being surprised by how good the trench variants are with hipfire when they watch me on stream, which by the way I do regularly here on YouTube, so if you want that, drop a subscription, thanks. Tip 4, and continuing with weapons but in a more general sense, weapon mechanics. The guns in this game have specific quirks and requirements when it comes to optimal usage. You'll need specific YouTube videos or write-ups for all the different ones for different guns and variants, but there are a couple of basics I can give you here so you aren't totally misusing two very popular gun types. Medic rifles, or semi-auto rifles, it's not a great idea to spam these as fast as they can fire at all ranges. Just because they can fire that fast doesn't mean they'll be accurate doing so. There's spread in this game, and some semi-auto rifles have significant recoil and spread when absolutely spamming the trigger. This will be an experience thing, as you'll find the ranges and firing speeds that work for whichever guns you regularly use. But to begin with, just focus on actually landing that damage and starting to build up your understanding. And the other weapon type I'm going to quickly lay out is LMGs. A lot of LMGs will be extremely inaccurate if you start firing before you aim down sight. So if you start to fire the gun and then ADS whilst you're firing, no, not going to be good for most of them. It's often worth making sure your sights are up before that trigger gets pulled, unless you're just going to hip fire. Experiment with different ones, read the weapon descriptions, and you'll start to get to grips with things. Tip number 5, don't feel like you have to run everywhere. In fact, simply don't run everywhere. This is another huge tip if you're coming from certain other shooters. Battlefield 1 has some huge maps with massive open spaces, something I have a significant issue with, but that's not a discussion for today. The point remains though, if you decide you're going to just sprint across the open plains of this game, you're going to be absolutely mauled. There's tanks, planes, snipers, dudes lying in bushes, and a whole host more lethal ways to have your day ruined. Learn the maps, assess the situations, take your time when necessary, use smoke when it's in play, and play around with vehicles and gadgets to have an all-round less death-filled experience. Tip 6, and a perfect lead off from the last point, use your gadgets. I often have people come into the stream and ask how to score more points or rank up faster or whatever it is. Sometimes I'll ask them if they're using their gadgets much and they'll be like, not really. The classes are not just there for the weapons they offer. Equally, if not more importantly, are the gadgets, and extremely useful for point scoring. So if you're a scout running spotting flares, use them, and then get resupplied to use more. Medics, heal and revive your teammates. Supports, how are your team going to shoot people if they've run out of ammo? Resupply them. And assaults, you should be absolutely hammering those enemy vehicles with your rocket guns, your dynamite, your anti-tank nades, or whatever you've selected. So please, if you take one thing from this video, please actually use your gadgets and be useful to your team. Thank you. Tip 7, and another easy transition from the previous point. If you want to score points effectively to climb the leaderboard, mark those flags if you're the squad leader. I told you how to do this earlier, remember? RB, R1, or Q. Or you can use the comm row, select the one you want if you can't easily see it. If you aren't the squad leader and your leader isn't marking flags effectively, you can request they mark a flag. If requests come in and they don't mark one, eventually the leadership gets switched to a player who requested a flag. Tip 8. Sort your settings out. The chances of the default settings being exactly what you want as an individual are next to 0. This can transform your experience, sensitivity, field of view, button or key layout, etc. If you don't know how to do your settings, I'll link to my settings guide from last year in the description. It's for console, but there's also stuff that can be applicable for PC players. I hope it helps you out. Tip 9. Unlock all the guns you can and try all the guns you have, even the weird ones. Did I think the Hellriegel Defensive, some weird version of an already great weapon with more recoil than a bipod, was going to be something I would connect with? No. Do I really like it now? Yes. Did I used to want to use the Fedorov Optical when the Fedorov Trench already existed and I thought it was perfect for what it was made for? No. Is the optical variant now my favorite gun in the game with 100 server stars? Yes, absolutely. Keep in mind some guns are part of the DLCs, by the way. Regardless, if you want to see the other guns I currently like and rate highly, I'll link to my best guns in BF1 for 2025 video in the description, so you can get some ideas. But yeah, basically, try everything and see what works for you, even if it's a gun you barely ever see other people use. And tip 10, understand and try to accept the game state and have fun, because practice makes perfect, and the more you play in a focused fashion, the more you're likely to improve. At this stage, BF1 is not that highly populated, especially on Xbox, but also to a degree on PlayStation and PC, which means you're generally going to be playing against long-term, very experienced players. There's also clans that stack up in lobbies, and there are significant issues with high ping players and just general server issues. This can all have a large impact on your performance. Understanding that and still having a good time is going to be the key to your progression. You likely aren't like me, who has played this game to ultimate burnout levels, so take in the experience and just improve over time whilst enjoying yourself. And remember, a new Battlefield is coming, where there will be a much larger player base and an overall much lower level of average ability, at least during its active life cycle. So any BF improvements you make now may pay off when that game arrives. If you have any beginner tips or tips overall, drop them in the comments below and hit the like button if you enjoyed this. Here's my best guns of BF1 list for this year, an easy click, and subscribe for daily Battlefield content. I always appreciate that. See you next time.